thank you so much for coming on. So many faces, and it's great to see you all. The reason why I've asked you all to be on this with me today is to discuss race in a safe place. And I think it will be great to ask some of the questions that you might want to ask and to share some of the stories that you've faced around race. And I think by doing this, it will shed some light. It may be other people watching. Maybe when we post this, some of the questions that you guys have the courage to ask and some of the stories you are brave enough to share will be heard by people who maybe wouldn't have the opportunity. This week has been a difficult week for us all, and I imagine you all have something to say. And I wanted to create this space so that we could have the talk. When I was 6 weeks old, I was taken in by a white family, and predominantly my friendship group were white people, lived in a white area, and so I've got quite a lot of white friends. And what I found is a lot of those white friends had been asking me, how can I help? How can I get more engaged? What can I do? And then I was trying to figure out what I could say, and then I said to Jenny, who's on the call, who was the person who kicked this all off, and I thought, right, I should maybe talk a bit. I said to her, let me give you this analogy. I've read a book by a lady called Brene Brown who talks about parenting, the gifts of imperfect parenting, and she talks about sitting in the dark with your children. Learning to sit in the dark with my children and not wanting to turn on the light and say, it will be okay, you'll be fine, everything's going to work out fine, don't worry, but actually having the courage to let them be vulnerable and sit in the dark with them has been a big lesson for me. So when Jenny said to me, what can I do? I said to her, you have to sit in the dark with me. You have to let me be vulnerable with you, and you have to listen to my pain, and you have to have the courage to hear it without trying to justify it. Just let me speak. And then it got me thinking about all of my black friends and all the other black people I know, and I imagine they've got their own stories, their own experiences. So today it's an opportunity for me not to do all the talking. In fact, I want to start off by going round. I'll unmute you. I'm kind of going to be the host. I will want you all to go round, and I'd like you just to say your name, who you are, and why you wanted to join the conversation about race today. This is a safe space to speak.
Hi, my name is Daniele, and I met Ife when we were on Dance X back in 2007. I'm a singer, dancer, and actor, and I wanted to join this conversation to better educate myself, but also to be an advocate and an ally for anti-racism, trying to continue the morals that my parents taught me as a child.
Hi, my name's Laura. So Ife was one of my neighbours, so it's nice to see you, Ife. And she asked me to be part of this. I was a bit nervous to speak on this subject, but I feel like it's more of an opportunity for me to listen than speak. So yeah, I work in Northampton, I work in the community a lot, I run projects, I work with charities, and I write. So yeah, just an opportunity to listen and learn.
You contacted me, and I thought it was a good opportunity to hear what God has to say, because we all have all these agendas, but a lot of the time God is not involved. So when we get God involved, we'll find that we'll have more success and we'll have more peace.
Hi there everyone, my name's Joy, and I'm a therapist. Ife invited me on today, and I just wanted to sort of be part of it, a bit feeling like you, Laura, a little bit nervous. As a therapist, I recognise what my nerves are. I can feel the butterflies, I can feel my heart racing. My body thinks there's something that's going to happen. That's all I know. So, thank you.
Yeah, Gomi. I've known Ife pretty much most of my life. I spend my time working from home a lot, currency trading. And yeah, I think it's a good opportunity to hear and see what other people think in this current climate.
Hi guys, I'm Jo, and I know Ife because we did theatre together. And the very first show that I did when I moved to this country, I did it with her. And so we've kind of just been off and on in touch with each other. So she reached out to me to be a part of this panel, especially with what is happening now in the world. I think it's important to have conversations, and not just conversations where, you know, people of color speak, but conversations where, you know, our allies or people who don't understand us as well can ask us questions, can speak to us, so that we can also try to either show them our point of view or show them why it is that their feeling about us or thoughts about us are misconceptions. But I'm just going to say that it's an open space, and you know, this is a space where if you want to ask something, just ask. You know, and even if you think, "Ooh, is anyone going to take this, you know, weird?" Ask it, because then we can put our ideas into it, or we can tell you our experience, and you'll be able to understand more of what we go through.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I've known Iffy since I was 5 years old. She was the first friend that I made when I went to go and live with my nan. So we've known each other quite a long time. I've been there in Iffy's life when she's faced racism. And I suppose I just want to get a better understanding of how other people have dealt with racism, how you feel about, you know, people that have got different views. And I just want to, you know, I understand that I will never understand, but I just want to get a bit of a deeper understanding, I suppose.
Hi, I'm Tanya. I'm from Newport Pagnell. I've been friends with Iffy since I was about 8 or 9. And really, I thought this call was a really good idea to get a better understanding of, as long as I've known Iffy for, when we was chatting the other night, I had no clue the kind of things that people have said to her before. So, you know, rude, outrightly rude, whether they thought they was in some way paying a compliment. They didn't sound like compliments to me in the slightest. And I was really shocked that I never knew the kind of things that people can outrightly come out with and think nothing of it. So yeah, I really wanted to get a bit of a better understanding of you know, the different ways that different people are treated, because it's not something that I wouldn't dream of it, you know, to put something out there like that to someone. We're all different, you know, in different ways, but at the same time, we're still one. You know, do you know what I mean? You know, yeah, no. I see it as we've all got a soul, and our souls really are all the same. We arrive the same and we leave the same.
Hi, my name is Nav. I'm an addictions counselor and soon to be a psychotherapist. Yeah, for me to be a part of this discussion, I mean, my first bit was a bodily resistance. Just because, you know, there's a part of me, I'm a good listener, that's what I've been trained to do as a therapist. But, you know, wherever it comes to having an opinion or having a say, it petrifies me because in that, it brings a conflict, and a part of me doesn't like conflict. That's inherently who I am. I've been in this country for 6.5 years. I don't think I've directly experienced any sort of racial discrimination, but there has been a lot of the silent one, you know, the things that are very subtle, that are not said. It's the looks, it's the conversations, it's things like when people, you know, get into a train, sizing which seats are there, which seat gets taken first, what's a safe place to sit. So there is that whole sort of subtle thing. I observe it, I laugh, because like I said, you know, I don't like conflict. So I just have learned ways to silence things that sort of stir emotions. And I think it's getting to a point where I'm actually beginning to allow myself the luxury of opinions and conflict and differences. And I think it fits into, which is why I'm here in this discussion, and certainly to listen as well.
But to be honest, I'm just here to listen to what's going on at the moment from other people in terms of their opinions and views on what's happening. going to try and input anything I can that may help the situation. We're in unprecedented times, and I'd be interested to hear what people's views are on how they feel things will be after this actually comes to an end, because as far as I'm concerned, there is just no way after this we will be the same. And I really do hope it's a transitional period for everybody in this meeting right now, and to be quite honest, across the Western world. We need this. It's just a time we're in where with everything that's happened in the last 6 months of our lives, the world is, other than actually stop spinning, we are heading in a new direction completely. I hope that the result of all this is a complete paradigm shift in how people view us as Black people, and we get some kind of respect that we're due. We're talking the best part of 400 odd years here. It's not just about George Floyd and the other people that have lost their lives. It's about our humanity for nearly 500 years. That's pretty much why I'm involved in this meeting today.
My name is Blaine. I met Ify in December, I think, in one of her courses, Mastermind Alliance. When she asked me to join, I just thought, I wanted to learn. I wanted to hear what people are saying and also share my experiences. It's pretty much similar to everyone.
Michael, you've got 30 seconds to tell us why you wanted to be part of this conversation.
I'm glad you said 30 seconds.
That's why I said 30 seconds, because I know what you're like.
I've known Ify for about 10 years now. I think we started doing the website. I'm glad Ify invited me to do this, because we've been talking about this anyway. I'm being very disturbed about the racial targeting for 7 years. 7 years I've been very disturbed about this. And on a different issue, not so much issue, the silence of churches on racial issues also. And I've not been silent about this, and I will not be silent. Something's got to be done. So I'm glad to be here.
Evening all. I say I'm Dan. I've known Ify for about 14 years through mutual friends. We've experienced some racial situations between us when we've been out. We've both been, victim of that when we've been, out in the same group. I was a police officer for 10 years. And I'm just here to, I suppose, share what I can, learn from what you all have to say, and just sort of hear everybody's sort of experiences, and hope that we can, build some strength between us and soldier on.
Oh, sorry.
Hear me?
Go for it.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I've just been trying to work out how many years I've known you for, Ify, but it's been many years. I can't work it out. That sounds awful, but it's been a very long time. Ify has been always there for me, actually, popped up in my life whenever I've needed her, like a little guardian angel. There's something very bizarre going on there, but she has always popped up in my life. Often in Starbucks, we've ended up bumping into each other. And I find her a very inspiring, influential person. I'm a yoga teacher and a massage therapist. I've found for the last 2 days, 2 or 3 days since this has been going on, I have literally felt really heartbroken. I've been just wandering around and tears welling up in my eyes, and just this negative energy that's around. And I knew in myself I needed to do something. I didn't know what that was. So I reached out to a few people in my circle, Black people who are in my circle, who I'm close to, and just asked them, what can I do? And Ify was one of those people that I reached out to, and so she invited me to join in tonight. So I'm really, really privileged to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversations that we can have, and I just think that starting this conversation is the beginning of us all coming together and educating ourselves. So I'm really, really honoured to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I guess once Ify invited me to join the call, it was hard really to say no with her rather long voice note. But in my usual direct way, it was a yes, I'll join, just tell me the time. I guess I'm here more so to give
a bit of a view more from what it's like within a corporate and a legal world, but from the other side. So in terms of what are those challenges in trying to open those doors for the next generations, and what can we do to set the foundations for the people that come after? Because I think that's a really important part, because we are already on the back foot. We've got years to make up in terms of that progression within, not just in terms of employment, but also every other element of socio-economic factor that plays a part in our lives. And we are just so far behind it that it's just, what are those small steps and those small measures that we can all take that will help the generations to come, and to help us eradicate this, and to ensure that we get to a place of where it's Black lives do matter, and we're not at the bottom of the pile. So yeah, that's why I'm here.
How's it going, guys? I'm Daniel Williams. Over the course of the last week or so, I've personally been really affected by a lot of what I've seen, a lot of what I've heard, and I've spent the past 2 days specifically trying to talk to as many people as possible, trying to talk myself and give a viewpoint of a Black British male of 34 years old, and speaking to a lot of my people specifically who know me as Dan. I'm in the music industry, so I'm known as 3D, which I think my name's come up as that at the moment, but I wanted to try and affect the people who are closest to me, because I think they're the people who know I'm not a bad person, and I wanted to try and push that narrative that any one of us Black males here in this room could have been George Floyd, or any other man who has died unjustly, due to police brutality. So I have been trying to fight as many fires over the last couple of days online, and just explain in as calm and not angry manner as possible why we're here, why we're doing this. And obviously when Ife hit me up about being part of this panel, it was a no-brainer. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I watched your post the other day, and it just stopped me in my tracks, and I was like, right, I need to reach out to you to let you know I'm with you. I can hear you, so thank you. Thank you. Laura is somebody that when I first met her, I could see that she had fight in her, and she weren't afraid to just say whatever she wanted. And she always used to ask me really, really, well, questions that no white people normally ever ask. Like, she just asked me questions and she would want to know. And I think that was brilliant. So let's start with you, Laura, to start the conversation. And then what we'll do is put your hands up, and then I'll unmute you and just decide who speaks, no preference. And if you're like, I really want to speak, start waving, and I'll be like, let's start talking.
Okay. I guess I do have a question to pose to the group, actually. So yesterday in Northampton there was a Black Lives Matter march, which I publicised quite heavily across my social media. I run a community project called The Happy Hood. I managed to help amongst a load of other people for it to reach a lot of people. And I posted a video of the march, and it's been overwhelmingly positively received, but I have had a lot of comments about social distancing and how people are putting lives at risk and all this kind of stuff. And I just wanted to pose a question to the group about the best way to make our voices heard, and what people's thoughts are about marching at this time. Full disclosure, I was there. I was in the thick of it. So yeah, I just wanted to see what people think about that.
And who would like to say something? Okay, let's go. Sarah, go straight in then. Hand up quick.
Thanks. It was just a really quick one. I think the important thing around the whole social distancing is the fact that coronavirus isn't going anywhere, or I should say COVID isn't going anywhere. So in the history of all of our history, they've never found a single vaccine for any COVID strain. So now the chances of them finding a vaccine for this one are slim. So actually all they've been doing is managing how quickly people catch the virus and how they stop it from overwhelming the NHS, because they strip the money out of the NHS to support any kind of global pandemic. it's not, I'm not one of those conspiracy theorists who say this is something that's been created by Western world or wherever this has come from. It's clearly a real virus. It's clearly impacting people's lives. I've had people who are close to me who have unfortunately passed away as a result of this. But I think it's really hard to manage the perception and realize that at some point we've all got to go out and emerge. And I think as long as we are doing what we can to remain as safe as we possibly can, I don't think now is a time to stop doing that and to remain at home, especially not when you've got politicians who fleet up and down. You've got them opening up and talking about air bridges for us to travel, summer holidays going, schools going open. I don't think it's a valid excuse to stop a peaceful protest.
Hi. So I had a similar thing happen. I'm a gay guy down in the South Coast, and I'm part of a group on Facebook, and it's the LGBT network for Brighton and Hove. And they had posted about a march that's going to be coming up on the 13th, and I want to go. But my main question to the group at that time was, what is going to be done about social distancing? Because my parents are vulnerable, so obviously I don't want to affect them, but I also want to do what's right, which is to go on the march and be visible. And I kind of got microaggressions from one guy who, with that question that I had about social distancing, I'll read it to you. All he had to say was, "Says a white man." And so I came back with talking about how I didn't feel that that was an appropriate answer, and that it was kind of uneloquent, because he wasn't answering the question. He was just making a statement about my race. Because I feel that you should be vocal, you should stand up. I don't think it's something that's come to a head. I think I said this to you earlier on, Iffy. I think what's happening in America is it's very visible, but I still think it's happening in this country, but it's hushed tones. So it's not something that's new. And also, I suppose I can't empathize with what it's like to be black or brown, but I can empathize being a gay man and having people be homophobic. So I understand what that's like being a minority. So I want to stand up, but like you said, Laura, I need to know about social distancing, because I don't want to kill off any family if they were to, God forbid, get it. That was my piece.
I'm going to shake this up a little bit, because as much as we want to be all respectful and nice, we are not on here to be like that. We're on here to say what we want to say in a safe space and actually have it out space. So what I want to start off with is my eldest sister. I wanted her to come on this talk. She's much older than me, experienced much more. She's married to a white man, got a mixed race son. I started the call by saying to her on a voice note, "Hey, I really want you to come on this call because I feel like you've got a lot to say. I remember when I was younger and I called your son half caste." And she said to me, "No, he's not half caste, he's mixed race." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that's what you say." And I said, "But because you told me exactly what it was, I was able from then on to call him mixed race and never use the word half caste." And I think there's a lot of words that are being used, like I've been called coloured, like not in a derogatory way, but I was like, I don't answer to being coloured, you call me black. So I just want to play, and she's given me permission, I want to play her voice note. I asked lots of black people, I've asked so many black people to come on this call and talk and speak and be vulnerable. And there are many of them that have not been able to join me. When I spoke to my sister Sarah, who's in a corporate high position role, director level, surrounded by white middle class corporates, I said at the very beginning of the voice note, which she mentions was very long, "I get it if you don't want to come on here, because I know that by you talking, you're surrounded by white people, and I know that it might put you in an uncomfortable position." So the fact that as a black person, I already had to say that to my black friends who work in very white corporate, and I work for myself, so no one's going to fire me, no one's going to not give me a bonus. I've got the freeness to just say what I want, and no one's going to do anything. But I do respect that I've got a lot of black friends who have worked their way up the ladder, and are in white corporations who maybe don't feel comfortable speaking and don't still feel comfortable. And to be honest, this is the first time in my life I have felt comfortable speaking about my race. I talk about it all the time to my black friends. We all talk behind closed doors to black people, talk to each other. But the reason she hasn't come on is not because she's afraid. She said she would be worried that she'd get too mad.
Hey, Ify. I just listened to the message. It completely made sense. In terms of joining the panel, there's a bit of me that thinks it would be a good thing to do, but then there's another bit of me that thinks actually maybe what I'll do is I'll just watch it when you post it. I think the crucial thing about that thing that I said to you, and I think that one of the key things you have to get across today, and I think I can't come on it because I would just get too angry actually, is that I don't think it's about giving white people a safe space to ask the questions. Their space is safe wherever they are in the world. Actually, I could say that to you because I know that you're not going to judge me for saying that, because it's safe for me to say that to you, which is what black people feel every single day of their lives, wherever they are. They have to adjust the way that they behave to make sure that they fit the right temperature and tone of the people that are receiving their messages, which is why a group of black people together can talk openly and frankly about stuff, and a white person who isn't switched on or tuned on comes into the conversation, and it's like suddenly we have to apologize for the fact that, oh God, we have these hurts, and let us try and explain to you what they are. If you study anything in history, if you've watched any films like from John Grisham, like A Time to Kill, or you know that racism exists. And if you decide to believe that it doesn't, or be shocked at the things that are happening, then it's like, what's going on? It's like saying you're shocked at the fact that a gay guy got beaten up on video and the people got away with it, or shocked at the fact that a woman got raped and when it was taken to trial, and even though there was video of it, the man got away with it. These wrongs exist in the world, and anyone who decides that they are shocked about it or don't know, it's because they go around with their eyes blinkered and their eyes closed. And one of the biggest things that I'm excited about that's coming out of this is that people are saying it's not our job as people of colour, it's not anyone's job who is suffering to teach the people that are oppressing them why they're suffering. It's not our job. So I understand about it. I can't come on the conversation, so I understand completely about, you know, people wanting to learn in that. But as most of the people on social media have been doing, as Obama has given, there's a handbook. There are loads of tools where people can go and learn. Go and read first. Go and understand first. Go and switch your empathy button on first, and then come and ask someone who is your friend, who is a person of colour, the questions. Because don't come and ask questions and put them in a position where they feel awkward and have to temper the way that they are. Unfortunately, is the way that conversations have to go around race at the moment, have had to go around race for decades and decades and decades. Racism isn't that bad. I mean, it's that's an isolated incident. George Floyd is not an isolated incident. 2014, 2015, me and Chris watched video after video of black people being killed and whatever. The Black Lives Matter movement starts and you get stupid people like Ariana Grande again, but all lives matter. Yes, they do, but that's not the conversation we're having now. That's not the conversation we're having now. So, sorry, I've gone off on a tangent, but it's painful, Ify. It's painful. And I could say what I said to you because you're my sister. You're a black person. I love you. I know you're not going to judge me. I know you're not going to end up going, right, okay, she's a little bit aggressive. She's a little bit of an angry black female. She's a bit militant, isn't she? Let's not give her a promotion. Let's not blah, blah, blah. That is what black people face all the time. If they speak the truth of what they experience, then they risk losing out on advancement in careers and whatnot, whatever. And that is what institutional racism is about, because that is allowed. We have institutions constructed that allow people to make decisions like that, to hold black people back, to hold women back, to hold gay people back. So for me, I mean, I believe in intersectional views on everything. I believe in an equal society for everybody. I know that there are white men that, you know, have suffer prejudices and that. In terms of racism, and that when people turn around and go, yeah, but you know, black people are against white people and whatever, so that's racist. It's not racist. In the end, racism is fundamentally about power. Black people, even in African countries, do not have the power to make life hard for white people. It doesn't exist in this world. and understand that these are people, black people, carry hurts that are centuries old. We all carry those hurts. We may not talk about them, but we all carry those hurts, and it's unspoken between us all. We know it. Another person
leave me a really long voicemail. Well, again, a white lady who is just like, I don't even know where to start. I know I have to educate myself, but where do I start? And we started talking about Black Lives Matter and about everything that's going on. Jenny started to tell me about trauma that she'd faced from seeing me experience racism. Like, the fact is, like, and some of the stuff she said, I was like, oh, okay. Like, so I think that having this conversation, and I think what Helen said was spot on. I totally agree, but I understand that sometimes you maybe don't know where to look, or don't even know where to start. I had another person leave me a really long voicemail. Well, again, a white lady who is just like, I don't even know where to start. I know I have to educate myself, but where do I start? And I was just like, you need to come on the call, but she couldn't because she was working. But so I think now Helen set the tone for us. So let's just speak, yeah? Like, we're here anyway. Let's go. Let's start with you, Daniel, because I know you got something to say. Let's speak. Let's say it. Let's just say it.
There's a lot to unpack from what your sister said, genuinely. I think I fully agree in almost every way. I do think that there are situations that I've had where, perfect example, I'll use a friend as an example. I know she wouldn't mind. My friend Claire, who I worked with, going back 6 years ago. At the time I met her, she was one of the most naive people to our struggle ever. And there were a few comments she had made that made me realize she was naive to it. And I kind of questioned her. I was like, do you realize this is happening? Do you realize that this isn't something that is historical? This is something that happens now and is happening to me. And I saw her face drop. And then a couple of years ago, maybe a year after that, we had a conversation where I had been racially abused in real life, and called a nigger. I almost glided past that part as if it was nothing, because it's happened so much. And I went on Facebook and I explained the situation, and a mixed race girl, basically, I'm going to paraphrase a lot but there was one line she used specifically, which was, if you act like a CUNT, you will probably get called one. What that said to me was, I am black, therefore I deserve to be called this. And that really affected me. I think up until 2 weeks ago, I hadn't really joined the fight again, really, because I think that made me feel like I couldn't get past it. Anyway, back to my friend. I told her this, and I watched it sink in. I watched her just all of a sudden click, the understanding of, oh my God, you're going through this thing that I have seen on TV, I know exists, I may even have viewed through my friends, my family, anything, but this is happening to somebody I love, someone I appreciate. And that sparked a change in her, from being so naive to not realizing our struggle, to realizing that having a child who is half white and half Greek means he might even experience some of the issues and some of the racial, or maybe more xenophobic issues that surround people at the moment. That would be the only reason I would disagree with your sister, because I feel that had I not started that conversation and not willingly tried to intervene in what I saw was a massive load of naivety, not ignorance, but naivety, I don't think she would be at the point she is now. Look, I'm speaking to you now in what I would say is quite an eloquent, articulate manner. This is something that I was taught by my mother to do, to integrate and to be able to be taken seriously. I needed to change something that I innately was, in a way I naturally spoke, in order to be able to integrate into life. And I just want to make a quick point, because I don't want to hold this all, but on my on my live I did the other day, and I got really emotional on it because this is emotional. This is a lot, and you're reminded of every racist interaction, fake interaction you've had, every person who has fetishized you. All of this comes out when these things happen in the real world. And one thing I will say to the people, the sort of white people on this call is, it affects us. When we see this, it doesn't matter that it's a black man across the other side of the world. It hurts. It genuinely hurts to see the lack of humanity for someone who looks exactly like you.
Do you know what? I was thinking about this earlier, and I was thinking about all the black people that I'm blessed with in my life, and they're teachers, they're creatives, they're people like Iffy, successful business people. They are all what I see as exceptional, successful people, and I've never actually sat and thought about what they've had to go through to get there. I've just seen it as you're talented, you're amazing, you're an amazing person, and completely disregarded the fact that they would have had to, like you say, worked 10 times harder than an average white person, to be honest. And I think that's one of the main things. Like, and I'd like to think that I'm pretty socially aware and pretty pretty aware of what's going on around me. But it's stuff like that even as somebody who's got a social conscience and works with lots of different types of people, even for someone like me, that shocked me, because it's like, why did you forget that? Why have you forgotten that? Like, how is that okay? And I think that's part of this, the main point of what's coming out recently is, it's not okay just not to be racist. You need to be active. You need to be actively anti-racist. And that's like a big wake-up call. That's been like a light bulb, like a switch on in my mind. It's like, what have you been doing? What are you doing? So yeah, I completely agree. And I hope that people who watch this, white people especially, look around at the black people that are amazing in your life and think, yeah, but what have they had to go through? Like, it's not fair and it's not okay. So.
Oh, so good. Thank you. So we'll move on and move the conversation further on. So like, if we carry on from what you said, we have to be better. And we all know that, black people, we all know that. Like, my children knew that very young. I've made it very clear. You have to be 5 times as good, I say, because then you'll do well. Tanya, what do you want to say?
Yeah, that's that whole conversation that just went on. It just brought something to light that when we were kids, I always was almost a little bit intimidated by you and Sarah and Celestina. By no means in the slightest from the colour of your skin. I just mean from how ambitious you all were. You were all so out there and, just seemed to, from such a young age, you knew what you wanted, you was out there, you was making it happen. And I just saw that as ambition when we were kids and found it a little bit intimidating, because I was always a bit more sort of in the background, never really knew what I wanted to do or who I really was. And so now it makes me think, is that because that you knew from such a young age that you had to work that much harder? That really saddens me, actually, to think that you have to be aware of that from such a young age. And it does make me really emotional, because I have this terrible habit of being able to put myself in somebody else's shoes, and I do become a bit too consumed by things sometimes. But that's really made me think.
Ooh. Our mum was white. Our mum's not here anymore, but I remember she always would be like a bit intense when it's Sarah. She'd be like, you need to look the best, wear the best clothes, and always look good. Always. This is a little white lady walking down Newport Pagnell High Street. I remember mum always saying to me, can't go out looking like that. You've got to look like very, a bit overpowering, basically, on we had to look good all the time. And she always used to do that fight. And I'll just tell you one quick story. Like, there's a lady living across the road, an old white lady. Me, Sarah and Celestina were playing, and she called us Jungle Puppet. We went back and told my mum, and I just spoke to Mandy, the eldest of my mum's white children. And she said, I remember she went to the co-op, my mum, this little white woman, she went to the co-op and she saw a racist lady and she had it out with her and she said, don't you ever talk to my kids in front of the deli lady. And Mandy was saying that she remembers, like, our mum was like so serious about us not being overlooked. So that's why we had no choice but to be like that, because she kept telling us we've got to be.
I think I think it's an interesting one, because I think you spend so much of your childhood constantly being faced with criticism, critique, and microaggressions. Like, I remember going to the school careers woman and talking to her about wanting to go to the LSE, and she was like, well, what do you know about the LSE? Oh, that's not really for you. Maybe something over here. Maybe not think about going to college. That's not really for you. Maybe consider about what you'd want to do work-wise. It was, none of that should be an option for me, but why not? And it's those microaggressions that you get throughout your life, throughout your career. They do not go anywhere. That does not change. You learn to adapt to it. You learn to understand it, see it for what it is, and try and overcome it. But the issue is that we shouldn't have to. And that's a bit that needs to change, is that when I go to work, I shouldn't have to go to work and think, right now, this is now work, Sarah. When I'm going into a corporate meeting and sitting in a room, I shouldn't go in there with the thought of knowing that I will be the only black female in that room under the age of 35, with a boardroom full of white males, holding middle age. That shouldn't even be a thought. I shouldn't even have to think about that's the system, that's what I'm going to go into. That is what I face every single day. That is what I have faced every single day of my career, almost, from being probably late 20s and being at the level of which I am. Because the first thing everyone says to me is, God, you've done so well for your age. Well, what the hell does that even mean? You've done, why? Because you know what about me? You've seen that I'm in the room with you, facing you across the table, and suddenly I've done well for me. And it's those things that just, like, there is so much that we just need to do around the whole education piece, around how we really tackle it and call it out. Because if you don't call it out, it continues. And that's what I've done. I've called it out. And it's brought challenges. There's times of when you're labelled as an angry black woman. There's times when you're labelled as she's just being difficult, or it's just Sarah. But there's never times when it's called out for what it is, which was that actually the behaviour that was being placed in front of me wasn't appropriate. Like, the comments that were coming out of your mouth is not appropriate. The indirect racism is not appropriate. That's never talked about. It's never addressed.
So it's Terry's birthday. This is Terrence's other half. It was his birthday, and he's going back good a long time. It's
my 29th, wasn't it?
Was it your 29th?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's his 29th birthday. So I
11 years ago.
I invited everybody. I invited all of his friends, and the majority of his friends are black males who are all around the same age. They all go to the gym, with a couple of white guys and an Asian guy, and they're their girlfriends, some of their white girlfriends, and then me. I'd arranged for us all to get to the train station. Tell me if I miss anything out, Dan. We got to the train station. We all got on a train from Milton Keynes to Northampton. We're all walking. It's summer, so there's maybe 5 black guys in front, me and some of their girlfriend guys, and then some black guys behind, like a train of us. We cross across the road, and this blue car drives past, undoes the window, and shouts out, "Nigger!"
Yeah, so do you remember?
Shout niggers, yeah? The thing that happened. These tall, big, black towers of men that I respected. These big, black, muscly, athletic men who were all joking, busting jokes because it's Terry's birthday. We're excited, we're laughing, just having a good time. When he shouts out nigger that loud, none of us say anything. None of us. We all just walk. See in front of me, all the black guys just a little shrink. And I don't remember having a conversation with any of you. Dan, have I ever had a conversation other than 2 days ago about that?
I think it was more shock from my perspective. Yeah. And then by the time I realised what had gone on and processed it, they'd gone.
Yeah.
They didn't want. They weren't big enough to stop, confront us, and say what they had to say. It was, a cowardly, few words or whatever they uttered after that, and they were gone. So I think we were shocked. I mean, I don't know about yourself, Terry, but you know what?
I remember.
Everybody did go quiet after that.
Yeah, we were quiet after they. I mean, they sped along, so we can't get them. We can't, like, they're gone. They were just laughing. We kind of looked around. We carried on walking. We were looking around, and then JT, one of my really good friends,
who's a white guy,
was
outraged.
He heard it, and he was like, "Arseholes."
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He turned around and said, "They're fucking arseholes," and then we just stayed silent.
But my point
carried
is,
on working, and we just didn't talk about it.
But my point is, look, the people who were outraged was JT, a white guy, and then Neil, a white guy, and then JT's wife, a white girl. The white people in our group were like, after the silence, they were the ones talking, but we all didn't say anything, and I didn't say anything because I felt shamed. I felt like, why should I feel ashamed that someone was rude, like racist to me? Well, I don't know what that is.
I think it's because minorities have become used to and almost expect that is what you deserve. Because I read a very interesting book called Straight Jacket, Overcoming Society's Legacy of Gay Shame. And I can almost empathize with what you go through because you wear it on your skin, whereas the way I feel being gay is in my body. I almost have to straight act in certain environments so that I don't get picked on.
I think it's almost embarrassment, really, that someone has.
Embarrassment of what? Of like, why do you feel embarrassed? What, because you're black?
No, because they've picked one element of you and they've chosen to try to belittle you almost because
that says more about them. That says more about them.
No.
Like why they've done that. They've done something like that to make you feel ashamed.
Yeah, exactly.
But that is so weak. It's such a weak thing to do. Like, it's almost like sticking your fingers up at a teacher and running away. Like, you know they can't catch you and they can't slap you.
You're right, Jenna.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, I just feel like you shouldn't feel ashamed. Why do you feel ashamed?
People shouldn't feel ashamed.
To remember, though, is that the shame isn't attached to just that act. So you've got to think back to in the 60s, like, it was still legal to be openly racist. So we're not talking that many years ago. So the shame isn't something that's unknown to almost most black people who are walking this earth right now. So the shame isn't necessarily just from that one man shouting nigger out of a car. The shame will come from a history of being shamed, from almost every act that you do, having that feel of shame and that you're worthless, you're less than human, you're worth less than the rest of the human race. That's a hell of a lot of weight to bear.
I've been trying to get in on the shame one, and again, there's loads of people to talk, but like on this point specifically, I keep telling people over and over again, we have been taught to hate ourselves and taught that we are the lowest of the low. But it's not just that. We have been taught that by the best teachers with the best resources to keep that narrative being pushed over the longest period of time, to the point where when I hear a black man say, I don't date black girls are dead out, that I don't even hear them. I hear their masters. I hear what they have been indoctrinated with over years and years of being told black is bad, black is horrible, black isn't right, black is wrong. It's the dark versus the light. You always talk about that as well. To the point, I saw a clip of a Simpsons episode. I probably saw this episode. And they were having some sort of assembly, and the mayor comes out and says, "Oh, there's a problem in Springfield. We're going to code black." And I can't remember the two guys' names. I think Lenny is the black guy who works with Homer. The other guy says, "Oh, black, that's the worst color." Turns to Lenny and says, "Oh, sorry, Lenny, no offense." Lenny turns around and says, "It's okay, I'm used to it."
Yes. So I'm actually going to come at it from a different angle, because even as black people in this country, I don't think that you know, if you're born and raised here, I don't think that you realize the difference between Black people that grew up here, Black people that grew up in the Caribbean like myself, and Black people that grew up in America. So there are certain things that I didn't go through when I was growing up. So a lot of these things that, you know, that you speak about, that you would feel shame about, and all of those things are things that you would have had to fight through when you were growing up. I didn't have to fight through that because I grew up in a country that was majority Black. So we were the majority. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are other issues that we had to deal with, like colorism and socioeconomic things. But just as far as that is concerned, when I injected myself into this society, I already had my resolve. I was already an adult. So I already knew myself. I already was fine. And I realized actually a long way, years after I came here, that what Black British people were used to wasn't what I was used to. So when things happened, I would just stand up and just say, no. Or, you know, like I would always have an answer. I didn't grow up with that. I didn't grow up with the embarrassment or the shame. Or for me, I grew up right is right, wrong is wrong. So I would go guns blazing into somewhere and just say, hey, that's not right, blah, 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 blah. And I think nothing of it. And then you'd hear, oh, that person's been that way for like 20 years and you're the first person that's ever. And for me, it's like, oh, I didn't really, but it's just because I'm not used to it. Now that's not saying that I don't experience things as a Black woman, right? I do, but I think that I experience it in a different way because I don't carry the weight of what it is that Black Brits or Black Americans had to go through.
It's proof that we are living in a fallen world, okay? Evil is around us. If there's some more, there are more evil is just happening every day, okay? Now, this is more proof that we are living in end days, okay? With all this COVID-19, God has allowed this because he's trying to get our attention. But what have we done? Have we cried out to God, or have we sort of gone down the path of what we can see? We have to go into the unseen realm, which is where God reigns. I know this. Let me testify. I told my story, right? I'm an ex-soldier, okay? I had a bad crash in 2000. I was disabled, traumatic brain injury. To come back from that, I know it's only been by God's grace. And it's to tell everyone today that he loves us all. He's got a great purpose for each and every one of us. We just have to trust to him because God's timing is perfect. And the thing is, if we want to avoid all this rubbish in our lives, like the racism and the COVID-19, we have to draw close to God, because he said.
Really, I think all of us as Black people has gone through multiple different experiences, especially me in the corporate environment. I've been in different corporate environments. One time, I was told to do overtime. I was in a very white-dominated environment in the 90s and the early 2010s. And one guy, the manager, he said something very smart to me. He said, can you do some overtime? I love money, so I did loads of overtime. So I was a workaholic. And I go, yeah, I don't know, I've worked a bit hard. I remember this so well. He said flippantly to me, well, you know what? Something about your fathers used to work very, very hard in the fields, so you should be able to do a lot of overtime. Yeah. As much as I am a very positive person, I've never told you that in my life.
How did that make you feel when he said that?
Man, it pissed me off. I mean, my disposition is more anger than being tearful. So I was very angry. But in regards to the comment earlier, why do you feel shame? I can answer that. On that position, I felt shame because as strong as I know I am to be, you knew that there was a racial undertone that amongst a group of the narrow-minded, like white people that was working with me, I was outnumbered, and the rhetoric that was thrown to me when I have a comeback became more cutting and cutting and cutting. So in the corporate environment, I say silent. So it's not because you're not proud of your color. But that's bullshit. What it is like, it's like what happened with my Campbell family in the 16th century. You know, you have to obey the Musa in case you get a major repercussion. The shame is not about weakness. The shame is about you know you're strong enough to stand for it. You know you are strong enough to say what is right. And it's not because you're ashamed of your blackness. You're not ashamed of your blackness. But what it is, you're ashamed of the repercussion.
As far as I've ever been taught and I've ever read about in all the publications that we've had in the police force in this country, that has never been a technique that's been taught. From the people that I've spoken to in America, that's never been taught. So there are different restraints, different takedowns, different ways of, preventing somebody from either assaulting you, from escaping, or from harming themselves. They're the three main reasons why you would restrain somebody. And at the end of the day, what he's done is wrong. Straight up. There's no justification for it. He was handcuffed at the time, so there is only a very limited amount of harm that he can do to whoever's trying to deal with him, and there's only a limited amount of harm that he can do to himself. Now, in the worst case that he's trying to harm himself, if he's on the ground, he could bang his head on the floor, things like that. But there is no need at all for your knee to be on his neck. No need.
This is pretty much going to be against the grain of everything which we're talking about today, or what people are saying, and that's because I look at things from an analytical perspective and a holistic perspective. One, offense is received, it's not given. You can't offend me if I choose not to be. So call me what you want, I'm not going to be offended. Two, whatever minority you're in, you will get targeted regardless. So if you grew up in Jamaica, you will not be called a nigger because there are too many, everyone there is black. If you're gay and everyone's straight, we're gonna say something to harm you. If you're fat, we're gonna say something to harm you. If you're black, whatever the difference is, as humans, we're going to point it out. If I'm arguing with someone and I see they're fat, or you're a fat blah blah, that's gonna come out. Same way if you're arguing with a black person, you're XYZ. Now, when it comes to the whole BLM movement, I disagree wholeheartedly with what they're doing in terms of the messaging. I don't think this is anything to do with racism on white policemen against blacks. If we're to look at numbers, we're to look at statistics, and if we're to look at what really goes on, what the BLM movement should focus on is blacks killing blacks. If you care for black people, then stop black people killing black people, because that number is a lot higher than any police officer has. If we look at the numbers of police officers that killed unarmed black men, that's 0.07%. Now, if we look at a bell curve, which is what I do in my day job, where I'm looking at probabilities. If we look at a bell curve, that guy was a murderer, straight up murderer. No one's questioning that. That police officer is just a straight up murderer, fair enough. But what's the percentage of crime that's committed by black people in the States? What's the percentage of crime that's committed? Look at all the knife crime in London last year, and who killed who. So what I think is we need to stop that from happening. prevents the encounters with the police. And when it does, I mean, I've been stopped and searched 4 times for no apparent reason. I've been stopped, searched my pockets, all the rest of it. It happens. I say, look, whatever it is, what you need to see, all the rest of it. Great. But profiling is part of policing. You have to profile. Now, if you think 55% of crime is committed by black people, that represents, call it 6% of, well, in America, I think it's about 11% or 13%. 55% of major crimes committed by black people, which represents 13%
Joanna's
of the population.
flapping. She's
Which
flapping.
represents 13% of the population. Would you or would you not profile not a black woman, a black man, as a potential?
Comey, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I hear you, and this is what it's for, and I love that you are. But I'm like, hell no, like no. If there's so
Everyone
much more.
is. Every single person is, because it's the herd mentality. Everyone is, without looking at the cold facts, without saying, well, this guy who died was a criminal. This guy who died put a gun to a pregnant woman's belly. If that was your mum, your sister, your or the rest of it, of course, no one should be killed and executed. We understand that. But
wait a minute, can I just ask you, at the point of when he was murdered, did he hold a gun to a woman's belly? Did he serve his time for that? Did he serve his time for that offence? At the time when he was arrested, it was for alleged forgery of a $20 bill. Let's not get that twisted. Like whatever happened previously,
let's also not get
served
twisted
his
that
time.
He was high on coke. He was high on all sorts of drugs. But
are we killing every cokehead? Are we putting our knees on every person that's high on a drug in the street?
You missed my initial point, which was
demonize
no
him.
one deserves to die. No one is judge, jury, executioner. But where is the outrage for the black policeman who was killed?
There wasn't a black policeman who was killed in that incident.
Of course, exactly. This is my point exactly. There's a black policeman who's been good all his life, who was murdered. There's a black criminal who was murdered, but yet we're outraging for a black murderer, a black criminal, and no one's talking about the black policeman.
No, we're not outraging for a black criminal. We're outraging for a man that was murdered in the street by a law enforcement officer, regardless of race, by a law enforcement officer unduly. He was judge, he was executioner.
Question. How many arrests happen where law enforcement officers arrest black people that are killed versus that aren't, in a percentage? Do we know that?
What country? In what
America,
country?
UK.
Well, in UK, it's obviously far lower, but there is still way more than we should do, and it's still disproportionately represented
in America,
when you look at.
Started, so
when you're looking at your statistics, are you comparing a white male and a black male to how often they're killed by an officer, or are you comparing the number of criminals that are killed by officers? Because when you look at it and you break it down by race, black people are disproportionately harmed by law enforcement officers.
They're not disproportionately harmed.
They are.
That's incorrect.
Yes, they are. Statistically, it's there.
Can I just jump in and
let someone else jump in. This is great. I'm loving this. And I really am annoyed that I'm the person who set this up, because I want to talk, but I can't, because that would be unfair. You're all muted and me just telling you what I think. So I'm going to shut up and let. Right, Joanna's been waving. Someone else said they wanted to. Joanna wants to talk. Daniel wants to talk. Daniele wants to talk.
Everyone wants to talk now. I'm spicing it up. Let's go.
Yeah, thanks, Comey, because we have to have these conversations.
Yeah.
This is what the space is for, you know? And everybody's entitled to whatever it is that they think or feel, because we're all listening. And what I kind of wanted to drop into what you were saying is, I get all of your statistics and I get all of, black people do more of this and that, but I think nothing happens in a vacuum. So for example, you will find that a lot of the black on black crimes or that happen because socioeconomically they are oppressed. And so what ends up happening is they turn to lives of crime because they don't actually have the option. So it has to start from the top. They have to be able to be in a position where they can help themselves. And when they can't help themselves, then they turn to other means of survival. I'm not saying that it's right, but I'm just saying that, you know, and if you say to somebody, oh, Black Americans make up 11% of our population, but they do like 50% of the crime. Okay, fair enough. But is the justice system harder on them? And so it looks like they're the only ones committing crimes, because we've all seen the stories of white people committing heinous crimes and getting, you know, 3 years, Amber Geiger. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, there are things that happen that Black people disproportionately get put in jail or they're prosecuted or whatever. So I think we have to be careful that we don't look at things in such a small vacuum and try to widen the scope.
I work with a lot of refugees from Ethiopia and Eritrea. I'm originally from Ethiopia, so I've not been here long, so I've not really, growing up, obviously, I didn't know about like, I mean, everyone is the same. I think, as Joe said, she doesn't feel like, you know, she's experienced racism. And so, you know, it's fine. I mixed with people from different different cultures and everything. So I didn't have a problem. And so even when I came here, I came here about 10 years ago almost. And, you know, I know myself, so I don't have a problem if someone says anything. I don't personally get offended, but when I see people, you know, being racist towards like my friends and stuff, I do feel quite offended because I know who I am. But I work with a lot of people from Eritrea and Ethiopia, migrants, I think, you know, who are at the age of 16, 17, 18. And basically, they get put into the system, and I feel like they get put into the system where they teach them English, but they're so limited in terms of the information they have. So they go through the Sahara and, you know, through Libya. They've got this long journey that they come through. But when they get here, they're like, okay, you know, what do you want to do? They tell them, you've got an option to learn English, so ESOL, I think it is. So that's level 1, level 2, level 3 for 3 years, right? And they think that's what life is. And one of this guy was telling me that, oh, you know, when I first came here, I was told, oh, you know, you can work in a warehouse, right? And that's all they know. And after a few years, like, he started working in a warehouse, and after a few years, he was just like, oh, I didn't know that there was more. And so there's a limited information. This is what they're told that they can be. This is how far they can go, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's a failure in the system, in a sense, as Joe said, like, you know, again, or Sarah said, like, when she's in a room with white people in a boardroom, you know, Mel, she feels like, you know, people say like, you've done well for yourself, you know, because it's like, you know, it's quite surprising that you've made it this far. I've been told that as well. Oh, you've not been here long. Oh, you've done well for yourself. I never looked at it like that, if that makes sense. But, you know, now that I think about it, there's an expectation to, I don't know, there's an expectation to not reach us, like, to limit yourself. Not an expectation to limit yourself, but there's like, you're not expected to reach higher. It's like, you know, you can only go as far.
Social media plays such a huge negative part in racism, especially with everything that's going on right now. There was some clips that were put online earlier, and it was a white guy had been beaten. It was just such a short clip of a white guy being beaten by maybe about 10 black guys. And the person that had put it on, and I commented and said, well, that's awful. However, what led up to that point? You know, is this just one of those things where, be it, you know, a white community of racists who want to try and claw back and say, actually, no, these are the ones that are bad. It's not, you know, look at what they've done to this white guy. And there was another couple of clips, and I said to him, you know, you don't believe everything you see on and read on social media. I was commenting on the videos that were posted. It was somebody I know on Facebook. And I said to him, it's so easy to be manipulated by a video clip and a photo. And then a little bit further down, this lady had put on the full clip of what had happened. And this white guy had actually charged the crowd, the riots, with a machete and was trying to attack them all. And I said, see, there you go. How easily were you manipulated there in being led to believe that actually it was the black guys that were in the wrong, when in actual fact, no, it wasn't. It was the white guy that rushed the crowd with a machete.
I remember when I was in France and I was like 10, and we encountered like a group of people who were like calling us, like, because I was with, it was a school trip and I was with some like black friends, and so that was like 26 years ago or so. And then they were like they were calling us like Blackie and all of that stuff. I remember feeling really put out then, but I think it was because, you know, I was young, very young then. And I think having that type of experience that you had, where some random person all of a sudden just, you know, says the N-word. I think like what Jenny said, like it's an awful thing to happen, but I would literally put that down as totally a reflection of him.
I heard an interview with Quincy Jones, and he was telling this story which I remember forever. He was talking about when he was a young boy, and Quincy Jones must be 80 now, he's old. So we're going, when he was a very young boy, he used to deliver newspapers, black newspapers about black people all around his black areas. And then one day he decided to go across to the white area and start delivering newspapers there on his own. And all the white people liked him and they bought the newspapers, and he come back and was like, oh wow, I've made a good chunk of change here. So the next day, when he was delivering the newspapers, he took his brother with him, and he went round to all of them, and nobody bought them. And he said to one white shop owner, why didn't you buy any of my newspapers? I thought you'd want to, like last time. He goes, one nigger's okay, but two is a threat. There were so many of us, so many black people, all like puffed up and happy. They felt threatened by us. And that goes back to corporate, because my clients were white accountants. I used to get her to go to, when we got further up north, I'd send her to go and meet them and sign up the accountants, because I knew that they would more likely sign up to our business, my business, because I was the director, if they saw her represent us than me. But she didn't know I was sending her there for that reason. And I think when we look at race as a general, I was in a business that was predominantly, the people in my business were all white. White people were paying for my business, and all the staff were white, and I was the black person. When I would email or contact them, I would use the emoji, me, and I consciously recognized it. I'd use the yellow emoji to the white accountants, but to my black friends, I'd use the black emoji. And I started noticing how I decided which emoji I used based on how comfortable I was being black. So my white businessmen, I didn't use the black emoji because I didn't want them to think that I was being Black Panther. And my white friends who understood me, I'd use the black one too. And then my black family, I'd use the black one too. It's been ingrained. If I want to succeed, I have to get along with them.
What I will say is that when you're attacked by the police because of your race, when your friends who were doing nothing more than trying to ensure that people didn't die are then attacked and, I would say, hunted by the police, and then when you give CCTV evidence of the incident and the police still try and arrest the people who are victims because of the race for exactly the same incident, all the way to the point of when it takes somebody who has a legal profession and a criminal law background to step in and speak to the barrister, the police, chief constables, to make sure that this goes to the right department to be investigated as a hate crime, because that's what it was, tells you all you need to know. And that's just one person. this happens up and down the country, in the UK, across shores, near shores. It's a global issue. And if you haven't had to see it firsthand, I'm glad you haven't.
That we've all had a gut feeling, okay? We all had a gut feeling. Now, how do you conceive that? How do you describe what that gut feeling is? Let me give you peace to overtake you, right? Okay, that gut feeling is the Spirit of God giving us foresight into the future to help us, because He loves us and wants to help us. Amen. Jesus is the answer.
Amen. The main point of this call was that I wanted to know, what can they do? We have to educate our youth not to be racist. We have to teach them how to love everyone. But does anyone else have any ideas on how we can start to change this? What we can do, like just us?
I'm not sure if it's an individual thing, but what I would say is just look at where the world has come from the last 50 years. So there's hope for the next 50 years. We couldn't sit on buses 100 years ago, but now we can. So there's hope. I've got every confidence in the next generation and the generation after to be more accepting. There will always be differences, as long as you can see, as Bob Marley says, the colour of a man's skin and not his eyes. There would always be something which you can target, pick on, disable, whatever the case is. But I think over the next couple of generations, things will just get better.
I think that I'm done waiting for things to change. You know, I shouldn't have to wait another 50 years for me to be able to be my authentic gay self. You should not have to be waiting 50 years to be your authentic black self and filter yourself. That is, it's really not on anymore. You know, we're educated, we're informed. I would say that we need to educate from the young, but we also need the utmost, the government, to be able to change legislation and education, social reform. That's how it's going to really change, you know?
So we're talking about racism. Now, when we talk about ism of anything, you know, ism by itself means there's almost a shadow casted on it. So every time I'm separated, I don't have an equal opportunity as opposed to what the other might be getting, based on whatever difference there might be, not on merit, you know. That in itself excludes me. Now, as that exclusion, I could end up feeling rejected. Now, I was excluded, let's say, for example, I'll link that back in, for the fact that I had long hair. I was born in a Sikh family. You know, in my country, India, I was the terrorist because that time, you know, Sikhs were looking to have a separate, you know, separate country separate from India. You know, then went on to, you know, having my turban thrown pretty much every day for 4 years in the most premium institute of India, you know, something that was called the Eton of the East, interestingly. And that's what I did, because every day somebody would come and knock my hair off. And I had to tie the turban back in and sort of be gracious about it, because I had to, you know, accept it. So and then it was more about the fact about, you know, I was not a very masculine man. I was more in touch with my feminine sort of side. And then I was shamed for that. And then, you know, I learned toxic masculinity, which was aggression, fight, you know, just to prove a point somewhere. So every time, as I was othered, I also disowned parts of me. I became that. So I became a master of becoming the one that separated me, or that excluded me. Now, what that was doing was, and I realized that now, was the fact that because I wasn't accepted for who I was, I felt shame. I didn't know it, because the very virtue of shame is that the more we feel it, the lesser we're aware of it. So we adapt. So there's lots of goods lot of good that came out of it. You know, I got better, I studied more, I learned more. But somewhere, I never accepted myself. The point is, at the end of the day, when I'm cornered, at any point in time, and even now in my life, I either fight, I do nothing, or fight, flight, and freeze, or I run away. Now the point is, people are scared of running. People are done with running away. Nobody wants to run away anymore. You know, I'm done being cornered. I'm done being adapted. So I get up and I fight the system. So this is a systemic fight. This is not a fight about the obvious event that's happened where there's been this tragic death, which is criminality. I think it is about the systemic segregation of people, by people, for people. So I think it's the democracy of racism that is the issue, where the collective numbers exclude people.
Hear everyone, like in a safe place where we can really speak and just hear. Like, I'm sure I'm not the same person now when I started the call that I will be when I've left. Bye everyone. Thank you so much for jumping on.